Press your belly right now. If it's firm and won't squish, or if it sits low while your arms and legs stay relatively lean, that's not ordinary fat. That's something called cortisol belly. And cortisol belly is producing its own cortisol 24 hours a day from inside the fat cells themselves. And the more cortisol it makes, the more fat it stores, which makes even more cortisol. This can cause inflammation, fatigue, brain fog, and it'll only get worse if you don't do anything about it. I'm Dr. David Jockers, a doctor of natural medicine and an expert in functional nutrition. And today I'm going to show you the 3 specific levers that reverse cortisol belly so the fat, the brain fog, and the fatigue all start reversing too. So let's talk about what is a cortisol belly. And that's the first thing to know, is that the cortisol factory inside cortisol belly runs on one specific switch. It's an enzyme called 11-beta-HSD1. This enzyme lives inside your belly fat cells. Its job is simple. It takes inactive cortisone, which is the sleeping version of cortisol floating in your blood, and turns it into active cortisol right there inside the fat. That means your cortisol belly isn't just storing fat, it's actually making its own cortisol all day long, even when you're not stressed and your adrenal glands are calm. On top of that, this type of belly fat has significantly more cortisol receptors than normal fat. So it's producing cortisol locally and pulling in extra cortisol from your bloodstream. The factory makes it, and the receptors grab it. The cortisol drives more fat storage. The new fat builds more factory, and the cycle keeps going. This is why every trick in the book hasn't really worked. In fact, your stress can drop to 0, your cardio can be flawless, your sleep can be solid 8 hours every night, but cortisol belly still doesn't budge because the engine is inside the fat itself. It doesn't care what you do at the kitchen table, in the gym, or in your morning meditation. And it's not just the weight gain you have to worry about, it can also cause inflammation and blood sugar spikes. The cortisol that cortisol belly produces pumps inflammatory cytokines, the same chemical signals that drive arthritis and heart disease, into your bloodstream. The same cortisol blocks GLUT4, the door that lets sugar enter your cells for energy. So blood sugar stays high in your bloodstream while your cells go starving. You're wired but tired, experiencing afternoon crashes and cravings for sugar even when you're full. But it gets even worse because this cortisol doesn't just stay in your belly. There is a belly-brain loop. You see, cortisol crosses into your brain and it heads straight for one specific region called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the brake on your entire stress system. When cortisol gets released, the hippocampus senses it and sends a signal back that tells your adrenal glands to stand down. So cortisol production stops. But the hippocampus has a problem. It has more cortisol receptors than almost any other region of your brain. So when cortisol levels stay high for years, which is exactly what happens when cortisol belly is producing it 24 hours a day, the hippocampus takes the hit harder than anywhere else. It physically shrinks. We see measurable shrinkage in chronically stressed adults. We see it in patients with Cushing's disease where cortisol runs out of control. And we see it in people with high visceral fat, which is exactly cortisol belly. When the hippocampus shrinks, the brake stops working. So cortisol production never shuts off regardless of what's happening in your life. And the same cortisol that's blocking sugar from getting into your muscle cells through GLUT4 is doing exact same thing to your brain cells. Your brain runs almost entirely on sugar, and right now, the sugar can't get in. That's the fatigue. That's the brain fog, that's the memory slipping, the words not coming when you need them, the feeling that you used to be sharper. That's the loop. The belly damage feeds the brain damage. The brain damage feeds back into the more belly damage. And every cycle tightens it further. This is why people with cortisol belly describe a spreading problem over time. The memory gets foggier, the stress hits harder, the sleep gets worse. The protocols that worked at the start stop working. It can feel like aging, but it's really just stress aging you. And every month of dabbling in stress reduction without breaking the loop costs you more than the last because the brake itself is getting weaker, not just the fuel getting stronger. This is why we have a 3-step approach to breaking this. That's why most cortisol belly fat plans fail. They only attack one node of the loop while the others keep feeding the cycle. To actually break the loop, you need to hit it at 3 specific points, and the order matters. The first lever is dropping your cortisol input. This is the fastest responding lever. It pulls down whole body cortisol on top of what cortisol belly is making. The biggest move is a 12 to 14 hour overnight eating window. Finish dinner by 7, for example, and then don't eat again until 7 the next morning. So that's a 12-hour overnight fasting window. This single change calms your cortisol rhythm overnight, more than any supplement. Next is 10 minutes of morning sunlight on your eyes. This resets your circadian rhythm and pulls cortisol back into its proper morning peak. Then ashwagandha, specifically the KSM-66 extract at 300 milligrams twice daily. It calms the stress feedback loop at the receptor level. And finally, magnesium glycinate at about 400 milligrams before bed. Chronic cortisol burns through magnesium. Without it, your nervous system can't power down at night. I have patients report better morning energy and clearer thinking within 2 weeks of starting this lever. The second lever is decoupling insulin from cortisol. And this is where the visible belly fat starts shifting. Insulin and cortisol have a specific problem. When they're both elevated in your bloodstream at the same time, your body stores visceral fat faster, which makes it exactly the kind of fat that makes up cortisol belly. And every snack between meals reopens the insulin window while cortisol is still naturally elevated. The fix is 3 meals, no snacking, and a lower carb load. You finish breakfast. You don't touch food until lunch. You finish lunch, you don't touch food until dinner. The eating window matters more than the macros. A clean diet with constant snacking won't work. A slightly imperfect diet with 3 meals and no snacks, that's gonna work. Many of my patients, they see the belly start to shift in weeks 3 to 4. The third and final lever is physically shrinking the visceral fat. This is the longest play, but it's the one that closes the loop. As the visceral fat shrinks, the cortisol factory shrinks with it. The main move is daily zone 2 walking, 30 to 45 minutes at a pace where you can still hold a conversation. Low intensity movement burns visceral fat without spiking cortisol the way high intensity training does. The second move is omega-3s, 2 to 3 grams daily from a clean pharmaceutical grade fish oil. These directly reduce the inflammatory cytokines cortisol belly has been pumping out. Waist circumference and inflammation markers start shifting around weeks 8 to 12. Brain recovery follows after that, and the hippocampus rebuilds slowly, but it does rebuild. Skip any one of these 3 levers and the loop keeps running. The factory keeps making cortisol, the brake keeps weakening, and the fat keeps storing. But if you hit all 3, the factory inside cortisol belly shuts down. The brake heals, the hippocampus rebuilds, the inflammation drops, and the brain fog lifts. And the engine that's been stealing your energy and your future for years starts running in reverse. Now let's answer the questions I get the most from my community as they go through this protocol. Number 1, how do I know this is actually cortisol belly and not something else? 3 signs separate cortisol belly from other causes. First, it's firm, not soft. Press your stomach. If it doesn't squish, that's visceral fat or the kind packed around your organs. Second, it's lower and central, while your arms and legs stay relatively lean. The classic pattern is thin everywhere except the middle. Third, it travels with the symptoms in the title. Inflammation everywhere, afternoon energy crashes, brain fog, and sugar cravings even when you're full. If you've got 2 out of 3 of those, you're almost certainly looking at the cortisol loop. And if you want confirmation, ask your doctor for an HSCRP, a high sensitivity C-reactive protein test, and a fasting insulin test. Both of those are simple blood tests and both will be elevated. I always want to see CRP under 1. If it's over 2, you've got visceral fat. If your fasting insulin is up over 10, that's a sign you're storing visceral fat. It should be under 6, ideally for good health. Now, second question is, do I have to fast? I can't go 16 hours without eating. Good news, you don't need a 16-hour fast. While those can be really good, and my viewers know I love long fasts, the protocol for cortisol belly is a 12 to 14 hour overnight window. So finish dinner by 7 p.m., eat breakfast at 7 or 9 the next morning. That alone breaks the cortisol insulin coupling for most people. What wrecks it isn't dinner being too late or breakfast being too early, it's snacking in between the meals. You see, every snack reopens the insulin window and signals your body to store more visceral fat. So I'm prescribing you 3 meals, no snacks, and finish dinner 3 hours before bed. That's it. Make sure with each meal, you get 30 to 50 or more grams of protein. That high protein will help stabilize your blood sugar. Make sure you're removing as much of the ultra-processed food as possible. Make sure you've got really good, high-quality protein, healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil, grass-fed butter, avocados, grass-fed red meat, and make sure you've got colorful fruits and vegetables on that meal as well. That will all help create blood sugar stability and help keep your insulin levels down. And if you have a history of disordered eating or major blood sugar issues, or you're an underweight woman, stay closer to the 12-hour fasting window. So you can do a 16-hour fast. You don't have to, but if you're in that category of people where you've got disordered eating or major blood sugar issues, or if you're an underweight woman, again, stay closer to that 12-hour window. The goal is no insulin spikes between meals, not heroic fasts. Now, how long will it actually take to start working? Well, there are 3 timelines because there are 3 layers. The first layer of sleep, energy, and brain fog usually starts shifting inside 2 weeks once cortisol input drops and that GLUT4 protein transporter starts working again in your cells and starts grabbing the sugar out of the bloodstream and putting it into the muscle cells. The second layer of the visible belly change typically shows up in weeks 3 to 4. Once the eating window is consistent. The third layer of measurable shrinkage of the visceral fat itself and the high sensitivity C-reactive protein and waist circumference both dropping, that's 8 to 12 weeks of all 3 levers running together. If you're at 4 weeks and your energy is back but the belly hasn't shifted yet, I want you to know you're not failing. You're between layers, so you gotta just stay with it. Now, next question. I've had this issue for years. Is the brain damage reversible? And the answer is mostly yes, but it's not automatic. The hippocampus is one of the most plastic regions in the brain, meaning it's one of the most capable of rebuilding itself. Even in chronically stressed adults, hippocampal volume can recover meaningfully once cortisol exposure drops consistently. We see this in patients recovering from depression, Cushing's disease, and chronic stress. The catch is that one word, consistently. You cannot dabble. A few weeks of better habits won't undo years of cortisol exposure, but 6 months of all 3 levers running every day can produce measurable changes in cognitive function, waist circumference, and inflammation markers. The protocol I just walked you through is the same one I'd put my own family on if they were dealing with this. Now you see, your body, it wasn't designed to carry visceral fat as a permanent fixture. It only stays when the cortisol loop keeps feeding it. When systemic cortisol stays high, when insulin and cortisol stay paired, when cortisol belly itself keeps producing more cortisol, the protocol we just walked through breaks that loop on all 3 fronts. But if you want extra support during those first few weeks, especially while systemic cortisol is still coming down, I'll link the exact supplements I use with my patients below. Those supplements are called Cortisol Defense and Brain Calm Magnesium. These are designed to help drop systemic cortisol fast, especially during the first lever when your body is still catching up to the new sleep window and the new eating rhythm. Together, you get the top adaptogens and minerals at clinical doses working perfectly for this loop. You don't need these, but they can make the process smoother while your body is adjusting. The link for these are in the description if you want to check them out. And if this helped you today, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop a comment below and let me know which lever you're starting with, and share this with someone in your life who's been carrying the same belly, this same fatigue, this same brain fog, and has not been able to figure out why. And as always, be blessed.
Okay, let's jump right into this explainer. We're going to upgrade your morning coffee to rebuild muscle after 60.
You probably think coffee is just a harmless pick-me-up, but honestly, it might be draining your strength.
Here's the scary part. After 60, we can lose up to 8% of our muscle mass every decade.
But wait, by adding the right natural ingredients, your daily brew becomes a powerful muscle rebuilding engine.
Check out this rapid-fire combo: cinnamon, cocoa, and MCT oil. They instantly unlock circulation, energy, and stable blood sugar. These aren't just theories. Folks like John, Evelyn, and Harold saw massive real-world results in their daily energy. Now this is crucial. Swap those destructive, sugary creamers for complete proteins that actively repair your fading joints.
Adding simple milk and collagen powder gives your body the raw structural amino acids it desperately craves.
For 70-year-old Robert, that collagen wasn't just some supplement. It literally restored his physical freedom in the garden.
The real enemy here is anabolic resistance. Your aging body struggles to build muscle from normal protein amounts. To beat it, you need highly concentrated, quality protein. Whey protein literally sparks a massive 38% muscle increase. Take Helen, who's 67. She just stirred unflavored whey into her cup, regaining firm arms and super steady legs.
Next, ground chia seeds. They're a game changer that directly tackles belly fat, inflammation, and that stubborn muscle decline.
Just 1 teaspoon transformed 70-year-old George, slimmer waist, better digestion, and it totally erased his stiff mornings. Now for the ultimate defender. This specific ingredient literally slashes the hidden thief of all your strength: inflammation.
We're talking about turmeric. It contains curcumin, an amazing protector, but your body struggles to absorb it alone.
Here's the trick. Add a tiny pinch of black pepper, and boom, a 2,000% spike in absorption.
This golden duo is magic. It completely eliminated 73-year-old Satoshi's debilitating joint pain and crushed his inflammation.
So what's the big takeaway? Aging absolutely does not have to mean getting weaker. You can fight back. Which of these powerful ingredients will you stir in tomorrow morning? The choice to rebuild your future is yours.